Hello, my name is David Campbell. I'm an artist known as Wingy. It's W1NGY. I'm a software engineer and a musician, and making this video to show you a tool that I've created. It's basically an AI rhythm generator. It's called W1Hit. I'll put the GitHub link in the description. And so W1Hit is an AI MIDI rhythm generator. It's a way for artists to use AI in their work that doesn't feel like they're giving up control or losing control of the music creation process. It accelerates music workflows while still giving you full control of the final results. So the AI is basically a temporal convolution network. And so this is an AI that learns patterns that happen over time. In music, it can learn like rhythms and grooves. And it basically like has a sliding window that kind of allows it to learn features based on what happened before, and use that context to generate and or predict like what should come next. The model uses diffusion, which is a method that starts with randomness and it gradually turns into something structured. In music, it can transform noise into organized rhythms or sounds over several steps. So let's jump into it. How do we install W1Hit? Basically, once you've got Ableton installed, you want to basically look for max MIDI effect. And then what you're going to do is you're going to double click max MIDI effect to create a new MIDI effect. And we're just going to use this to figure out where the max MIDI effect folder is on our computer. So we're going to save this as temp. Then we're going to right click on it. We're going to do show in Finder. And basically this is the folder where max MIDI effects are stored. So we're going to go ahead and delete the temp max MIDI effect. Once you download the code from the GitHub, you should have a folder structure that looks something like this. The outer folder is W1Hit, and then it's got hit generator and max MIDI effect. This hit generator folder is basically for training the model. So if you want to essentially train it on your own rhythmic patterns, you can like create MIDI files with the rhythmic patterns that you like, and then you can put them there. And then there's basically a Jupyter notebook that you can use to train the model. However, if you're just more interested in creating music with this, then all you need is this max MIDI effect folder. And so what we're going to do is we're going to copy W1Hit from inside this folder. Let's see here, copy that. And we're going to paste it into the max MIDI effect folder that's on our computer. So make sure it's not the outer W1Hit folder, but it's this inner one that's under max MIDI effect. Paste that into your max MIDI effect folder. So once that's done, you want to open it, and there's an install folder. If you're on Mac, you're going to run this install Mac command. If you're on Windows, you want to run install Windows bat. That just basically sets up the dependencies. There's like Python dependencies that are needed to run the inference. And so we're just going to click on the Mac one for this computer. And it's just going to go through and install all the dependencies. Once that's done, you can just close the terminal. You don't really need it anymore. And then that out of the way. You should see W1Hit installed on your under your max MIDI effect folder. We're just going to go ahead and delete this temp one that we had before. If you don't see W1Hit, then you can do live settings, plugins, and then rescan, and that should populate it on your computer. So once we have this, we want to make sure that we are on a MIDI channel with a clip installed. All right, so here we got a drum basically a drum rack with a bunch of different drum sounds. And we're just gonna double click on W1 hit, and that adds it to the effect rack. So to make sure this is working, you're just gonna tap this big button one time, and then you're gonna switch into your MIDI, and you should see notes appear. So here we see there's some MIDI notes that were added, right? If you're not seeing that, then you need to go into this print, like double click on this print to bring up the console, and then look for any error logs that might help you resolve your situation. It could be that the dependencies didn't install correctly. That'd probably be the most likely issue. Or maybe you like forgot to install the dependencies. You just want to check that print output to make sure there's nothing dubious in that area. So this script start button, it's only used if you are actively modifying the JavaScript that runs this this effect. If you modify the JavaScript and you want to see the changes reflected, you need to click script start. Otherwise, if you're not modifying the JavaScript, then you don't really need to touch that button. Okay, so let's jump over here. Let's delete these notes that were added. Okay, so what is seed from MIDI? So basically, the AI needs a sort of reference pattern in order to generate its pattern. So the way you can think of it is we have a MIDI groove that we like, and we want to augment it using AI. And so the way it works is you can think of it as you're placing your hand over part of the piano roll, and so the AI can't see the full drum rhythm, and the AI's job is to try to like basically reconstruct it from what's there. And so in order to start, it needs to have a seed pattern. So what this does down here, this seed from MIDI, it looks through the cache of MIDI drum patterns, it selects one, and then it drops it into our piano roll. If we turn this off, it enables this section, which basically allows us to create a basically some MIDI hits from these parameters instead of from the actual MIDI files. So we can specify how many hits we want. Let's say we put it at like 8 hits. Let's say we turn the velocity up. So this is the maximum velocity that any single hit can be. Down here is the minimum velocity that any single hit can be. And if we hit the generate button, that big button in the middle, then we'll get our 8 notes. What do we set to 8? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 notes, right? And they're just basically spread out random, right? So for testing the AI, this is useful because you can generate basically a garbage rhythm and then say, hey, AI, try to take this information and make it into like a useful rhythm, like something that sounds musical. And so that's more for testing the AI. But if you're actually making music, this is probably not where you want to start, because you basically spend a lot of time just iterating to try to get it to sound useful. So basically, we're going to go back to seed from MIDI. So we can start with a drum rhythm that we already like, and then we can augment that rhythm. Okay, so what is voice select? So firstly, a voice is a single key in the piano roll. So in the case of a drum rack like this one, each of these different drum hits is its own voice. So we got snare drum, that's its own hit, low tom, that's its own hit, so forth and so on. Each of these is its own voice. So voice select is a toggle that lets us choose where we want that MIDI to land once it's generated. So if we turn voice select on, let's choose mid tom, and then when we generate a pattern, it appears here on the mid tom, right? This will basically generate a random pattern from the set of cached MIDIs. And so every time we push this button, we're going to get like a different pattern every time, right? So that's good for just getting some patterns into the piano roll. But if we want to augment it, we want to basically lock it to a single MIDI pattern, right? So we want to find a pattern that we like, and we want to lock it in place so that we can iterate, right? And that's what this seed lock is, or lock seed. So basically, you turn that on, and then now every time you hit this button, you're going to get the same pattern over and over again, right? Even if you move it to a separate voice, you'll get the exact same pattern. All right, we're going to go back to low tom here. So one caveat to voice select is that you need to make sure that you're not playing any MIDI while it's on, because it basically works by automatically selecting the first MIDI hit that it hears. So if it's on, like let's say we generate a pattern and we say, oh, we're going to play the pattern, but then we hit voice select, now it just goes back off again because it's now selected the voice that got hit. So we basically want to we basically want to not play anything when we are doing voice select, so that we make sure that we are actually selecting the right row and it doesn't just get reset to whatever drum hit gets played next. So that's important. Make sure that you're not playing any MIDI while you're trying to do voice select, or else you'll be very confused as to why your drum hits are not going where you want them to go. Okay, so let's first select a starting point, right? So let's generate a few patterns. Okay, this is decent. It's got some decent structure. And we want to augment this pattern. So we're going to do voice select and choose a different row so we can see the augmented patterns. And we're going to turn on lock seed. And the reason for that, of course, is that we don't want this changing. Like, we don't want the source changing as we are trying to augment it. Now, this variation knob is it's arguably the most important knob as far as the AI is concerned. What this variation knob controls is how much of the original pattern can the AI see. So imagine that you've got this pattern and you're putting your hand over it so that the AI cannot see part of the pattern. That part of the pattern is what the AI is going to try to figure out, and it's going to regenerate it. And so the more we crank this variation knob up, is the less that the AI can actually see the existing pattern. And so it's forced to invent a new pattern in those areas. And so this is kind of random in the sense that even though, let's say we have like 55%, it's a random 55% of this that is covered up. It's not like a contiguous area. It's like a random section. So it won't be able to see roughly half of this data, but it'll be kind of like in random spots. It's not like contiguous. So let's try that out. So we've turned up the variation. So now the AI cannot see 55%. And then we hit generate. And now we can see the AI is forced to try to recreate the pattern. And it actually does a pretty good job. At 55% for this pattern at least, it does a pretty good job of replicating it. It added some notes here, which is exactly kind of what we want. We want it to create not the exact same pattern. We want it to keep the rhythmic idea that it started with, but we want to augment it so we can get variation, right? And so the more that we turn up this variation knob, the less of that pattern the AI can see, and it's forced to invent a new pattern to replace it. And so you can see now it's doing things like it's shifting this in off center, it's adding more nodes. Yeah, so it's basically changing it to a higher degree. What we don't want to do is crank the knob all the way up to 1. if you crank it all the way up to 1, it basically means that the AI cannot see any of the pattern. And so when we ask it to regenerate it, it's basically going to just put a row of notes, because it's going to default to what does the average drum pattern look like. And so this is what the AI thinks the average drum pattern looks like. It's just a string of notes, some in like strong in some areas and weak in other areas. But that's not musically useful to us, right? So we'll delete that. The other thing you don't want to do if you're trying to augment is make sure, or the other thing you don't want to do when you're augmenting is setting the variation to 0. Because when you're setting the variation to 0, you're saying you're not covering up any of the pattern at all. The AI can see the full pattern, and so it's just going to regurgitate the exact pattern back to you. So that's basically what will happen. That can be useful if you just want to reset and then start from scratch. Like you want to keep augmenting the same pattern, but you don't remember what it was. You could just reset the variation all the way back to 0, hit generate, and now you've got the pattern that you started with. Okay, so now we know what variation does. It basically covers up part of the pattern so that the AI can't see it, and then it's forced to regenerate it. What does temperature do? So temperature is basically a way that we can get the AI to be a little bit more creative. The way you can think about this is when the AI generates an answer, it looks at every single note and it assigns a probability. So it says, what's the probability of a note being here? What's the probability of a note being here? What's the probability of a note being here? It could be like 90%, 20%, 30%, 0%. And when the AI spits out its answer, as long as temperature is 0, it's going to only take the highest probability sections. It's only going to answer with the highest probability notes. As we turn this temperature up, what we're doing is kind of like squashing that probability distribution so that less probable answers can start to pop through. So now if let's say we turn it up a bit and we generate, what's going to happen is you're going to start to see more ghost notes. You're going to start to see more like extra infills. You're going to start to see like the AI is getting a little bit more creative, because now notes that would have normally been blocked are now going to be able to essentially bleed through. And that's kind of useful for like making like little fills or adding ghost notes. Basically like a very subtle variation to what you started with. Let's crank it up all the way and see what it does. In fact, we'll increase the variation a little bit as well. Okay, so now you can see the augmentation is a bit heavier, right? It's dropping more notes here. It's adding here. Yeah, so it's basically augmenting to a higher degree. If we push the variation even further, of course, the AI has to get a little bit more creative. And now we can see the pattern is starting to drift a little bit more away from the original. We have even more ghost notes over here. We're dropping some here. We're adding more ghost notes, more here. And the pattern is getting a little bit more augmented from before. Now, what are iterations? Iterations are basically the number of times the AI gets to refine its work. So when the AI gives you an answer, if the iterations are iterations are 1, it's going to immediately spit out the answer. But as you turn the number of iterations up, what it's going to do is it's going to generate an answer, and then it's going to feed it back into itself as an input. And then it's going to do that for as many number of iterations that you set. So let's generate a rhythm without any iterations and see what happens, right? Let's do that first. Okay, so this is what we get without any iterations. The temperature is still up and the variation is still up, so we still get some augmentation. Let's select a different voice. And then now let's turn the iterations up. We're going to start at maybe like 5. Well, let's say our 5. So now with more iterations, the pattern starts to drift even further away from the original, because the AI is basically feeding itself the output as the next input, right? And so the more that we turn that iteration knob up, is the further and further it's going to drift away from the source, right? Right. So now with the iterations cranked all the way up, we can see that the density distribution of notes is kind of still the same. So it's managed to keep some of the original integrity, because it kind of knows where, oh, there are notes in this section, there are notes in this section, there are notes in this section, there are notes in this section. But now they're all kind of like spread out. It's not close to the original at all. It's been sort of re-implemented over and over and over until we end up with this, right? So the more you crank that knob up, the more your result is going to drift away from the original input. So if we want to go back to the original, we actually don't need to turn temperature or iterations down. If we want to go back to the original, the only thing we need to modify is to turn the variation off. Once variation is off, that basically, once again, lets the AI see the whole rhythm, and then it just goes back to what it originally was, right? Okay, let's see. Okay, so how can we use this in our workflows, right? So this basically is going to accelerate your ability to generate rhythmic ideas and to essentially complete projects quicker as well. You can add more variation to your projects. You can make sure that things don't sound too robotic, which is kind of ironic, is that we're using a computer program to make our music less robotic. And so let's actually start with the bass drum. We're basically gonna anchor our ears by adding like a 4 on the floor beat. So the thing about rhythm is it's kind of hard to tell if a rhythm is good or bad unless our ears are properly anchored, meaning that we need to know when the downbeat is, right? Elements like syncopation only make sense when your mind already knows where the downbeat is. And so for this example, I'm gonna just go ahead and add a bass drum, 4 on the floor rhythm. So now our ears are anchored to that downbeat. Then we're gonna turn off this lock seed so we can get some new patterns. We're gonna first find a sound that we like, right? Actually, I kind of like that rim shot. So I'm going to do voice select. I'm going to select the rim shot. And then we're going to try to find some, basically we're going to try to find a starting point, right? So we're going to generate some patterns. Okay, that one's pretty good, right? Okay. Oh, it ended up on my closed hat. Let's make sure that that rim shot is selected. Honestly though, that's a pretty good rhythm, so well, let's see what it sounds like on the rim shot. Okay, there we go. Once again, you want to make sure you're not playing MIDI while you're using voice select, or else it's going to end up triggering on the first note that gets played. So let's lock the rhythm in place so that we can augment it. Once again, I'm going to do voice select just to make sure that this is actually on the rim shot. Then we're going to just go ahead and delete. And now we're going to try to apply some variation to it. So we're going to turn the variation knob up, and then we're going to maybe turn the iterations down. We don't want it to drift too far. We'll do like 2 iterations, and we'll turn the temperature up like maybe halfway, and then we will see what happens. Okay, let's. Okay, not bad. So we're gonna see what our original was. We'll do voice select, we'll select the hand clap, we'll turn variation all the way off so that we can see what our original pattern was. And so we can see where it applied augmentation and sort of like how much. So in this case, we can see it didn't really change it very much. It changed some of the velocities. So here you can see that it increased the velocity here. So it hasn't augmented the structure of the rhythm, but it has modified the velocities. So we might want to go a little bit harder on the variation. So let's delete, well, let's first make sure we're selecting the rim shot, and then we're going to delete. We're going to push the variation a little bit higher, and we're going to increase the temperature. Actually, no, because this has a lot of notes already, adding ghost notes doesn't really make much sense. Ghost notes and fills don't do too much for us, but I'm going to set the temperature up a little bit anyway. What matters more in this case is iterations. So we're going to push iterations to like maybe, let's start at 4, right? Okay, so now we can see what's happening is it's dropping some more notes, right? It's doing some more augmenting. And let's listen to what the augmented version sounds like now. All right. And so this is a very powerful technique in that rhythm is essentially the underlying like core of all music, right? You can have music without chords. You can have music without melodies. You can have music without anything but a single drum. You can have a pencil on a table, and that'll create music for you. But the one thing you cannot go without is rhythm, right? Because rhythm basically is what makes music. And so this is a very powerful tool in that it allows us to create some really expressive music, but also really quickly because we can generate a lot of rhythms on the fly. So let's go into that, right? So first thing, of course, we're going to find, well, first we're going to turn lock seed off so we can generate some new patterns, and we're also going to turn the variation down. And then we're going to just find the sounds that we like, right? Let's go for this high tom. So do voice select, high tom, and we're going to generate a few patterns and see what they sound like. It's a little bit too busy for a high tom. Okay, that's not too bad. Let us make a variation of that. Right now, it looks like it's kind of, the velocities are all kind of equal, but we might want to like mix it up a little bit, humanize it essentially. So we're going to turn up the variation to maybe like 50%. We're going to give it full control of like adding ghost notes. We're going to turn the iterations down because we don't want the core idea to be lost. We want it to still be essentially the same rhythm, but just augmented with like ghost notes and a little bit of variation. Okay, so now we're going to make sure that lock seed is turned on so that we don't generate a brand new seed rhythm. And then we can go ahead and delete the existing notes and generate some new ones. Okay, so now we can see this one is more varied. It still has the same rhythmic idea as before, but now we have a few ghost notes in place, and I think maybe a few things have been shifted. All right, cool. And so we can basically continue with that idea. For this, I think though, I want a different rhythm for this tom. That's not bad, but we can do better. We're going to crank the variation down so we can see, of course, the original. I think I need to regenerate that. Okay. Okay, so we don't want that. Very robotic. Ooh, we want something with a little bit fewer notes in that. So we're just going to kind of iterate until we find something that, okay, this is, I guess this is fine, but once again we want to augment it so it's not so like played straight. So what we're going to do is lock it in place, add some variation, delete this one, regenerate it. Okay, so now it's dropped one of the hits, so that's a little bit more musical. It did drop a lot of the velocities, so I'm just going to bring the velocities back up a little bit. Okay, and then we're just going to continue in that manner. We're going to find the sound that we like. Let's go for this rim shot. We're going to select the rim shot. We're going to first turn the variation all the way down. We're going to unlock this seed so that we don't get the exact same pattern as before. Going to generate. Okay, let's find something different. Okay, and sometimes you'll find a rhythm that's fine that you don't really need to add variation to. Like as an artist, it's it's up to you at the end of the day. So if you generate something out of this and it's like, oh, that doesn't really need any form of augmentation, that sounds fine, then you can just use it as it is, right? Yeah, so let's add one more drum sound. Let's go for mid-conga. I'm gonna do voice select, mid-conga. We're going to generate some patterns. Ooh. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. There's no variation to this, obviously. You can see that the pattern that it selected is very, very played straight. So this is a case where we might want to augment it a bit, just to give it a little bit more of a human feel. So we can push the variation up. We're going to turn the temperature down. We don't want too many ghost notes. We want to keep the main idea. We're going to keep iterations down because we don't want it to drift too far away. We kind of still want this basic pattern to be maintained, but we just want to maybe add a little fill here and there. And then we're going to make it only see about 50% and then see what we get. Oh, let's lock the seed. Always got to remember, lock the seed in place so you don't accidentally just generate a completely different pattern. You want to make sure that the root pattern is still the same. And so now we can hit generate. This looks like it mostly gave us the same thing. So that's an indication that the AI can look at that because it's a very simple pattern. The AI can just look at it and see, oh, I know what this pattern is. And so in order for you to force the AI to generate something new, we need to cover up more of that pattern. So we're going to push the variation even further. Now we're going to regenerate. Okay, now you can see we're getting ghost notes, right? That's exactly what we wanted. The core structure of the pattern remains as it was before, but now because the AI couldn't see a lot of this data, it's unsure, and so it ends up adding in these ghost notes, right? All right. So just to illustrate the power of rhythm in music, we're going to make a song that only has one note, right? We're going to pick a key and we're going to basically build a song that only has one note. It's just made purely out of rhythm. And so for that, let's go ahead and add a new MIDI track. In this case, it's the grand piano. I think this is a grand piano thin air. We want to set this to 8 bars because our generator creates 8 bars worth of MIDI data. But if you want to use less of that data, it's fine. You can set it to whatever length you want. The maximum it will generate at a time is 8 bars. But if you wanted to have like a 1-bar drum loop or a 2-bar drum loop, you could do that as well just by setting the loop to a shorter length, and then the rest of the generated info would just get ignored. So let's pick a scale. We are gonna do, let's say we do F minor, and we're gonna go ahead and put this in scale mode, and we're only gonna use the root note of the track for this song. So there goes our F. So first thing we need to do, of course, is add the utility W1 hit. Then we're gonna select the voice we want. In this case, it's the root note. And let's do this one. And then we are gonna go ahead and generate a pattern and see what it sounds like. And let's hear it out. Okay, not bad, but once again, let's add some variation, right? So first thing we do, lock it in place. Crank that variation knob up. We'll do maybe around 40%. We want it to maybe ghost out some of the notes, so let's push this to we'll say 37%. And we want it to be a little bit more creative. We want to iterate on its idea, so let's give it 2 iterations, right? We don't want to go too crazy with the iterations. So first we need to delete the existing notes and then hit generate. Okay, now we can see it's ghosted out some of the notes, and we can listen to what that sounds like. And if we wanted to get something even more unique, we could push the iterations up. This one's a little bit still the same. I think also because this is a simple rhythm, we need to push the variation harder. The AI kind of knows a little bit too much that that's what the rhythm is. So we need to basically cover up more of the rhythm so the AI is forced to give us something different. So let's try it again with the variation higher. Okay, there we go. So now we can see that that very static pattern has been broken up, right? All right, cool. So we're gonna go ahead and let's add another instrument. We're gonna do, this time we're gonna reach for serum so we can get a nice bass in there. Yeah. All right, we're gonna make sure that we have, well, before that, we'll just figure out what sound we want. So let's go for maybe we'll go for a bass sound, maybe an acid bass. Let's see what it sounds like. Maybe something a little sharper than that. Let's try this. That's nice. Okay. So we're going to add a clip. We're going to set it to 8 bars. Ableton has already set it to F minor, so we're going to stick with the root note. We're going to find a nice deep, maybe not that deep. Okay, this F2 sounds pretty good. Of course, we're going to go for our W1 hit, and then we're going to select the voice. In this case, it is the F2. And then we're just going to play and then try some different rhythms. All right. Not bad. Let's push the velocity up a little bit. Sometimes you get a rhythm that you want to stick with, and like I said, use your artistry to figure out whether you should apply variation or not. You don't have to apply variation to everything. If it sounds good, it sounds good, and just stick with it. So we're just going to keep going. We're going to add another MIDI instrument. We're going to drop W1 on there again, and we're going to go for another serum. We're going to go ahead and find a nice sound. Let's go for a lead this time. Let's figure out. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Let's try it out. We're going to drop a clip in there. We're going to set it to 8, and we're going to stick to the root note. Maybe, ooh, that one sounds great. Oh, it's also F2. So we're not even really moving up and down the scale. We're literally just selecting F2 every time. There we go. And then we're going to play around. We're going to generate some rhythms, right? All right. Once you get a groove, then you know that's the one you want, right? Okay, so let's see if we can augment this a little bit. Not too much, because it sounds pretty good already. And once again, we can always reset it if we augment it and then we don't like what we get. And so we'll go ahead and delete that. We've locked the seed so we get the same bass rhythm. And then once again, we're going to crank the variation up. That was a very static rhythm, so the AI is probably going to know what it looks like even if we cover it up a decent amount. So we're going to have to cover this up like maybe 70% or something to get the AI to really play around with it. Then we want some ghost notes, so we'll crank the temperature up and we'll give it like maybe 3 iterations to refine its answer and see what you get. Okay, there we go. So now we've got something that's a lot different than the original, but it keeps the core idea of the original. And we can just keep going. Like, let's add like another, actually let's add one more bass. I love serum, so we're just gonna go for another serum. Let's pick a, let's see. What do we have? So we could even go for a pad. So the cool thing about this is that you can just extend the notes, right? You don't have to treat it as a sort of like a drum rhythm. You could generate the rhythm and then you could just extend the notes. So if it's something like a pad or you know, like even like an ARP, if you need the notes to be longer, you can just extend them, right? So let's see what we get. Right. Well, let's play around with that. First, we're going to, of course, drop it in. Set the length to 8. Then we're going to drop in our W1. Then we're going to select the voice. We're sticking to, what is it, F2? Where's F? Or actually, let's just see what it sounds like. Okay, I like F4 for this one. So we're going to go ahead and voice select for F4. And let's generate a rhythm and see what we get. Okay, so now because this is a pad, the length of the notes actually matter more. So what we're going to do is just select all the notes, hit shift and go to the right to increase the length of the notes so we can actually hear that pad more instead of it just being cut off every 16th note. And then we can even go to, we're sticking to F key, or like F note rather, but we can even, let's say, do a voice select on a different F, like a lower octave or a higher octave, and then we can just generate a rhythm there to sort of add some flavor. All right. Okay, and then we're going to, let's add a vocal, because every great song needs some vocals. We're going to use Splice. Once we open up Splice, we can find some vocals in the key of F minor. We will do filter by F minor, and we will select we'll select hooks, because of course hooks are what hook you into the song. So we will play our rhythm and then sample what some of the vocals would sound like on top. Eyes in the headlights. They've been running around my mind. I promise that you will see it through. Now I see through you. Where were you when I needed you? When I needed you. You promised that you would see it through. Soul stain fingerprints etched in page. Nightmares in the daylight, still I'm getting from. Echo stain fingerprints etched in the page. Echoes of ambition etched in the page. Soul stain fingerprints etched, I'm getting paid. Soul stain fingerprints etched, getting paid. Soul stain fingerprints, still I'm getting. Dude, that song. Stop playing. Man, don't come close. Okay, so that kind of illustrates the creative power you can get from just basically stacking rhythms. This song basically only has one note. There's no melodies, there's no chord progressions, just basically slapping the same note on different instruments using different rhythmic elements. And the cool thing about rhythm is because the patterns are all different, it means that they automatically find their own space in the rhythm. They don't crowd up too much, they don't overlap too much, and so you end up getting these really nice compositions that sort of have a lot more freedom to have each instrument pop through, right? So yeah, that's basically it. I'll make sure to put the GitHub link in the description. It's an open source project. It's free for everyone to use. Sadly, it only works with Ableton because regular VSTs cannot put MIDI notes into your piano roll. Only Ableton does that. But I mean, I'm an Ableton fan. I primarily only use Ableton, so that's not a problem for me. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching.